21 seconds. That is all that survived. 21 seconds of film from Beaumaris Zoo in Hobart, recovered after 85 years, and released by the National Film and Sound Archive on May 19, 2020. A thylacine, moving, pacing with the unhurried confidence of something that still owned the world it walked through, in a frame that, by every official record, should not exist. This is the footage that resurfaced. This is what it rewrites. The archive settled one question and forced open another, because by 2023, a peer-reviewed paper would argue the animal in that clip may not have been the last of its kind. The reel came from a 1935 travelogue, Tasmania the Wonderland. For 85 years it sat unseen, unaccounted for in any public index of thylacine film. Researchers Brandon Holmes, Gareth Linnard, and Mike Williams of the Tasmanian Tiger Archives identified it and brought it to the en face. 21 seconds. The animal paces its enclosure at Beaumaris Zoo. Stiff-held tail, a low and deliberate stride, the striped lower back that no other Australian predator carries. The National Film and Sound Archive released it on May 19, 2020. What the researchers had found was not a new sighting. It was a window back into a world the official record says closed before the clip itself was already old. The question that window opens is not whether the footage is genuine. It is what it tells us about how much of this animal's history we cannot see. Thylacinus cynocephalus, a striped marsupial predator the size of a medium dog, capable of opening its jaws to an angle no canid can match, carrying its young in a backward-facing pouch. The official record dismantled it with striking speed. European settlement brought sheep to Tasmania in 1824. Within decades, the thylacine had been framed as livestock killer, and in 1888, the Tasmanian government introduced a bounty: £1 per adult, 10 shillings per juvenile. That program ran until 1909 and paid out more than 2,180 bounties. The last known wild animal was shot in 1930. 3 years later, one of the few remaining individuals was captured in the Florentine Valley and sold to Hobart Zoo. The thylacine was added to the protected wildlife list in 1936. It was too late. The last known captive individual died at Beaumaris Zoo on September 7, 1936. The species was officially declared extinct in 1986. The record is precise and unusually complete for a large predator, which makes one detail strange. Tasmania still lists the thylacine as presumed extinct, not confirmed. After 90 years, the world's most documented marsupial disappearance remains, officially, a presumption. The mainland extinction is treated as an older, cleaner chapter. Fossil evidence places the thylacine's disappearance from mainland Australia at around 3,000 years before the present. The dingo arrived and spread. The thylacine retreated, then vanished. But the mainland chapter contains no systematic modern survey. The Cape York Peninsula reaches roughly 600 kilometers northward from Cairns toward the Torres Strait. Dense vine thickets, open savanna, river floodplains, and pockets of rainforest so continuous that aerial mammal census is functionally impossible. In the wet season, the single unsealed road into the northern reaches closes entirely. This is structural inaccessibility, the kind that historically allows fauna to persist beyond the edge of formal documentation. The absence of a modern mainland record is a statement about where surveyors have looked, not a statement about what the land contains. In late 2016, the Booth Richardson Tiger team placed camera traps within 50 kilometers of Medina, in southern Tasmania. The footage those cameras returned was reviewed by Nick Mooney, a wildlife expert with decades of field experience in thylacine-related investigations. Mooney assigned a 20% probability that the footage depicted a thylacine, not a confirmation, but a formal acknowledgement that the possibility could not be ruled out. A right to information release revealed that Tasmania's Department of Primary Industries, Parks, Water and Environment had received 8 separate thylacine sighting reports between September 2016 and September 2019. 8 reports in 3 years, each logged, each filed, none confirmed. Researchers subsequently deployed formal camera trap surveys across target areas. They returned no confirmed thylacine. A negative result is a result. It is not a boundary. What the cameras proved was that a thylacine was not detected where the cameras sat. The sighting record extends far beyond any single survey. A detailed study of 320 reported thylacine sightings judged just under half as credible, and every one of those credible reports remained inconclusive. But credible, inconclusive reports are not explained ones. The morphological convergence across those accounts is the argument. The stiff-held tail, the pale transverse stripes across the lower back, the distinctive gait, a loping, stiff-legged motion that no canid species replicates. These features appear across 3 decades of reports from observers who had never read each other's accounts. The thylacine was shy, solitary, and mainly nocturnal. It hunted alone through dense cover. An apex predator with those traits does not accumulate sightings easily. When consistent physical descriptions do accumulate, across geography, across decades, from qualified observers working independently, they constitute something. Not proof. Zoology requires a specimen. But they constitute a pattern, and patterns in wildlife science are the starting point of investigation. That question reached peer review in 2023. A study led by Professor Barry Brook at the University of Tasmania analyzed 1,237 quality-rated observational records of thylacines in Tasmania, spanning the period from 1910 onward. The analysis was co-authored by researchers from Australia, the United Kingdom, the United States, and France, and published in Science of the Total Environment. The conclusion was precise. Extinction most likely occurred between the 1940s and 1970s, with later survival considered possible but unlikely. The study did not conclude that the thylacine is alive. It concluded that the animal may have survived for decades, beyond the death of the last known captive specimen, a span during which it would have generated sightings, and during which those sightings would have been dismissed as folklore. If a Tasmanian population persisted undetected into the second half of the 20th century, in a landscape with roads and active wildlife programs, the question of what is biologically possible in unmonitored terrain shifts significantly. The biology of concealment has precedent. The coelacanth, a large, anatomically distinctive fish with lobed fins, had been missing from the fossil record for roughly 65 million years, when a living specimen turned up at a South African fish market in 1938, surprising every zoologist who had written it off as prehistoric. The black-footed ferret was formally declared gone in 1979. 2 years later, a surviving colony was discovered in Wyoming. Both cases share the same structure. The absence of detection in a poorly surveyed environment had been read as biological absence. The environment, not the animal, was the variable. The thylacine's behavioral profile makes it precisely the kind of animal hardest to detect. Shy, nocturnal, solitary. It avoided human contact and moved through heavy cover. A predator with that profile, crossing thousands of square kilometers of unmonitored scrubland, will not appear on cameras placed where it is not. The honest counter is the physical record, and it is a serious one. In 2018, Lauren White and colleagues at the University of Adelaide published radiocarbon dates from mainland thylacine fossil specimens in biology letters, placing extinction at approximately 3,227 years before the present. The window is statistically narrow. No thylacine bone, hair, or verifiable DNA from a mainland population has been recovered from any period closer to the present than that estimate. The fossil evidence closes cleanly. That carries weight. But the fossil record only reflects what taphonomy preserves and what researchers subsequently locate. In the tropical environments of northern Queensland, soft tissue decomposes within days. Bone survives poorly in acidic, humidity-saturated soil. A clean closing date in the fossil record tells us when the physical evidence stops. It does not tell us what the living population was doing in terrain that leaves almost nothing behind. The Department of Natural Resources and Environment Tasmania states the position plainly. No confirmed wild or captive sighting for at least 50 years. That is the institutional record. Australia's mainland totals approximately 7.7 million square kilometers. The proportions subjected to systematic, technology-equipped, nocturnal wildlife survey, the kind capable of detecting a solitary, darkness-adapted predator the size of a medium dog, remains vanishingly small. Camera trap coverage mapped against the full continent produces a scattering of dots. The gaps between them are not empty because the land has been searched and found wanting. They are empty because no one has placed a camera there. The Booth-Richardson deployment covered a fraction of Tasmania. Tasmania is itself a fraction of available mainland habitat. The absence of evidence is a function of scale, not a function of certainty. The clip runs for 21 seconds. It was filmed in 1935 as part of a travelogue whose primary purpose had nothing to do with wildlife documentation. The thylacine was incidental. The footage sat unindexed for 85 years, outside any public record of known thylacine film, unknown to the researchers who spent careers studying the species. When the NFSA released it on May 19, 2020, it became the most recent known moving image of the species. Not because a new thylacine had been found, but because an old one had been lost and then refound. Separately, researchers Robert Paddle and Catherine Medlock established that the skeleton and skin of the last known captive animal identified it as female, overturning the long-held belief that the final specimen was male. The animal we thought we knew best was not what we had believed. The 21 seconds recovered in 2020 follow the same logic. A reel sat outside the archive's knowledge for nearly a century. The archive was incomplete in what it held and, by extension, in the confidence it lent to every record downstream. The animal paces its enclosure. The film ends. The question of what else the archive missed, across decades of unmonitored wilderness, does not.